I have 4 people from Potato Dreams of America who I am super excited to engage with. They are director, multi-hyphenate director, writer, real life participant Wes Hurley, and producer Mischa Jakupcak, and lead actress in many respects, Marya Sea Kaminski, and production designer Kristen Bonnalie with us here today. And I would love to do a quick just around, and I've already said your names in essence, but tell us a little bit like the variety of things that that you were involved in on this project and what your job does in essence within Potato Dreams of America. Let's start with Wes. Why not?
So I wrote this script for Potato Dreams of America it's very closely based on my life. About 8 years ago, and Mischa came on board about 6 years ago, and we've been trying to make it, and finally shot it last year right before COVID hit, and we're editing this past year, so I edited it myself. So yeah.
Excellent. And Mischa, you're a producer on this. What does a producer do on a film like this?
Yeah, so yeah, this has been a really fun project. I met Wes and first read the script about 6 years ago and immediately fell in love with the story. On this, we sort of, it's been a long process, and so we started off with a short VR piece that Marya was in years ago. And it was about a 5-minute short immersive piece. And then we also did a 12-minute short documentary, all based on Wes's story and his mom's story. And so we sort of used those to launch into what the main dream had always been, which is to do a feature narrative version of it. So it's been an amazing journey. And as a producer, you know, Wes and I did fundraising, was obviously a big thing. And then we loved putting together the brilliant cast, doing auditions. We did a lot of the auditions locally and cast locally, and we're able to bring in the brilliant Marya from Pittsburgh after she left Seattle. And you know, just really help kind of support Wes's vision and help bring on the amazing team and of talent like Kristen.
Yeah, excellent. Marya, you performed in the movie, but tell us a little bit about what brought you to the piece.
Oh, thanks. It's nice to be here. It's nice to see everybody and see the friends in the viewership. Hi, all. I had the opportunity to perform and be on set and step inside Lena and Wes's story. But I have been closely tracking and advocating and trying to convince Wes to let me be support staff for this piece for a long time, almost 8 years. I think I was at the very first read through of it way back when, and and have been able to work on some other films with Wes and projects with Wes, and they have been such transformational moments. So yes, I've been sort of along for the ride and got to perform in the final film.
Wonderful. And Kristen, Kristen's on set right now, friends, so we may be intermittently engaging with Kristen.
Hey, how's it going? We're just about doing our group photo. It's super fun.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on.
Well, if you need to go and do that. Oh, go ahead.
They actually came to me, so everyone's standing around me while this photo is being taken. So you guys, in effect, are in this group photo. It's amazing. So I met Wes probably, oh gosh, Wes, I can't even remember, like 6-7 years ago. We got an introduction, and he really enjoyed the work that I did for Brian Campbell on Big Boy. And that was in SIFF several years ago. And Wes and I just always wanted to work together. I helped him out a little bit on his Capitol Hill web series. And with Potato, I felt like there was just like so much like synergy between his story and my story, because all right. So I actually had been to Russia probably like, I don't know how loud that is. I'm really sorry, guys. This is almost done. Okay, they're leaving. I went to Russia right after the fall of Perestroika, like within a year after that, and spent several months there. So I was really familiar with kind of that culture and that region. I wasn't in Vladivostok specifically. And then there were a few other tie-ins as well. I think another significant one was I used to be a corrections officer, and with Wes's mother having worked in a prison, I kind of understood that culture as well and how that affects people and how strong but soft and loving you can be at the same time. And for me, I felt like I wanted to help Wes tell this story through the visuals. And we knew for production design, well, for the whole project, we knew that we wouldn't have a huge budget. And so we just kind of planned out things the best that we could, and we went from there.
Yeah, wonderful. We'll get into production design because it's such a huge part here in just a few minutes. Wes, I'm wondering if you can take us through the story is beyond belief in all the ways that it shifts and changes, and I assume it's all true, at least the large portions of it. Is it all like super based on your experience, or were there certain places where you took a little bit of more dramatic license for a plot twist or various things like that?
Fortunately, I didn't have to really take any dramatic license. So I would say it's 99% based on, things as they happened. A lot of the conversations, like the coming out scene, like a lot of the conversations are pulled, directly from my memory or how I remember them. It was important for me for Russia because I'm a big fan of magical realism and literature, especially, and there's not enough of it in film, I feel like. And so for Russian segments, obviously, like, Jesus and all that stuff, and Vladimir Lenin being alive in the portrait, that stuff is kind of heightened, but the rest of it is very true. The challenge was more sort of condensing true, not so much like I didn't have to add anything, but I had to condense a lot, so it's like I was technically raised by two grandmas, but I made it into one grandma, stuff like that where you have to simplify. But in terms of adding any twists or anything like that, I didn't need to do that.
Yeah, and Mischa talked a little bit in the introduction portion about the kind of other pieces that came before, the VR kind of short film and the documentary, which absolutely play into some of the visual style and the dramatic tendencies of the film. And yet I also feel like so much of your earlier work with the Capitol Hill web series and is also alive and well in kind of the dramatic spaces of the film, particularly the more comedic and absurd side of things. Can you talk a little bit about how the work that you've created previously has kind of added up to what you were able to do with Potato Dreams?
Yeah, I really, my education, I always wanted to make films, but my education is in theater and arts. And so I'm really excited about heightened reality and kind of theatrical reality, stuff that you're not supposed to do in film. We're not, we're supposed to be more naturalistic, but my personal interest is in exploring things like that, like camp and, very meticulously composed visual compositions, that kind of theatricality that embraces the fact that you're watching a story. You're not you know, you're not ever fully immersed. You are always aware that you're watching a constructed reality, sort of in a Brechtian sense, you know, and that's always been, I think, part of all of my work, and it went into this film. I did try to make the American stuff much more sort of jarringly more realistic, but in a way it still isn't, you know, so it's like you should feel like you're in a much more grounded reality, but it's still not quite 100% reality.
Yeah. And did you have kind of specific cinema influences that you looked at in terms of other films that kind of worked in a similar way to what you were wanting to do, or kind of visual, you know, the way they achieved kind of the magical realism within the films that inspired what you did here?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I don't know. It's not that I was going for a specific style, but I mean, I think there's certain filmmakers that just inspired me to sort of explore my own style, like Derek Jarman, you know, watching his earlier films that are often just on a dark stage, and you kind of create this sort of tableaus and within the darkness on stage. And, you know, as a low budget filmmaker starting out, that was really inspiring for me to see that, because I was like, well, I can tell really any kind of story.
Yeah.
Like that way I can make, you know, I can make a Shakespearean tragedy if I want to on a really small budget, if I just, you know, find ways to be creative about it. And then, you know, obviously it's not for everybody. Audience has to be on board with going for that kind of journey, but
Mischa also brought up earlier casting, and there's already a question here in the Q&A about finding actors to portray the people of your life. Can you talk a little bit about, and maybe it's just starting with Potato and Lena, and finding those roles and entrusting those performers to embody, you know, an artistic vision of yourself and your mother?
yeah, the film, interestingly enough, like I feel like it was born of casting, and it finally got made because
Oh, you muted yourself, Wes. I don't know how that happened. There we go.
oh, sorry. I was saying, I wrote the film for Marya Sea Kaminski initially. You know, I've been a huge fan. She's been my muse creatively. And I really, there's something in her on stage that resonated with me and reminded me of the way my mom was in Russia, particularly. And so initially this was really a vehicle for Marya. And then as we were, you know, trying to get it made, obviously, I had to go into casting. It was unusual for me because usually I write all the parts specifically for people that I know, and in this case, because they're real people, you know, in the case of Marya, it was obvious, but the rest of them I had to cast. So finding kids was an interesting kind of, you know, I thought it was going to be a huge challenge. I was really intimidated by it. Me and Mischa decided to start casting Little Potato, you know, sooner rather than later, because I thought it was going to take forever to find a kid that's really good. And then as soon as we auditioned Hirsch, we just knew that we wanted to make the movie with him. So it kind of kicked my butt in a way in terms of raising the funds to make the film. I was just like, we have to make it before he's any older. Like, we have to make it now. So you know, in a way, first with Marya and secondly with Hirsch, you know, the casting had everything to do with getting this movie made. And then once we found Hirsch, we did auditions for Young Potato and for Russian Lena locally. And I was just, both with Tyler Bocock and Sarah Barbieri, I was just really completely blown away, mesmerized by their, you know, first video submissions, and then actually meeting them in person and auditioning them. I was just really incredibly impressed.
Did you spend much time, either yourself with the two Potato actors, in terms of coaching them on you, or how much space did you give them in terms of creating their own performance, in essence, of what they thought you would be? and so that it isn't just kind of parody in essence of you.
Yeah. I mean, Hirsch reminded me of myself a lot at that age. So I feel like I haven't spent as much time with Hirsch. With Tyler, I had a lot of conversations where I would just go through, telling him exactly how I felt during each scene, and also my body language and my mannerisms, because they were really different. Like, I'm a very different person now than I was when I first came to the States. I was just physically very kind of repressed and shy and uncomfortable around any kind of social interaction. And so I talked to him a lot about that, just physicality. And I thought he captured it so well. Like, in fact, my best friend, who's known me since I was that age, he finally saw the film and he was like, it's like watching you when you first came to the States.
Well, and it is. I watched the film again today in preparation for this, and I was amazed getting to the end, and knowing you as I have over the years, to feel like for most of the film, it doesn't feel like the Wes Hurley I know, and yet by after Bolero happens, it's suddenly like, there I see Wes. I see Wes now. That the flower has opened, and it was such a breath of fresh air to go like, look at that transformation. That it's really in both performances are exceptional. And I was telling the folks here before we kicked off that Hirsch has been in SIFF camps for years, and it's someone who we know very well. And Hirsch dodged a bullet today because I didn't bring any photos of Hirsch from years ago with crazy mustaches or anything. But one of the best young actors in our city. It's quite fabulous. Marya, can I ask, you've been connected to this for a long time, and for 8 years, and from what I read, were you a professor or one of Wes's teachers at some point as well? Did I read that somewhere?
Like a million years ago. Yeah, we were at UW at the same time. I was getting my MFA, and Wes was becoming the artist he is now. And we were in a classroom together, which seems so funny now. But yeah, and have known each other since then. I mean, in preparation for this day, I was thinking back, we did we read an adaptation, a Chekhov adaptation that Wes wrote of Three Sisters. I mean, 15 years ago at Washington Ensemble Theater. I mean, he's been making such fun and imaginative work for so long. I mean, since those days. So
yeah, and so for your preparation for the role, and you've performed Lena several times now. Yeah. How have you spent a lot of time with Lena? Is there a real familiarity there? Or is the performance as Lena, much more your own kind of take on it?
Thank you for asking. I have gotten a chance to spend a good amount of time with Lena, and as most everybody here maybe knows her, she is so charming and just totally intoxicating in terms of being in her company. But in between doing the immersive film, the short, and the feature, Wes gave me some notes about how Lena now is not how Lena was then when she first got to America, and actually found some tiny, it's probably like 45 seconds in all, footage of Lena at Christmas. Do you remember this, Wes, when you gave me this like home footage? And the camera's everywhere, but you can just see she's like in wonder, right? It's like her eyes are wide open, and it's like she seems both a little scared and so excited at everything that is unfolding. And it's literally like just a moment. But as I would return to that video a lot as I was moving through these scenes, because the Lena that we know and love now, she's gone through a lot to become that Lena. So to try to start back at the beginning.
And my last question on the Little Potato and Lena side of things, at least for now, the interesting choice, and I have my own theories about this, but the choice to do the first portion of the movie, the young versions, without a Russian accent in Russia, and then to switch to the US and then to have Russian accents. what was the intention behind that choice? I anticipate it was completely intentional and not an accident.
Yeah, it's something I intended from the beginning in terms of, for me, it was really important to try to portray or create this feeling of when you're an immigrant, sort of from an immigrant's perspective, that feeling of like when you come to a different country, you're a completely different person, you're on a completely different planet, your relationship with everything and everyone and everything is so completely different. So I really wanted to jar the audience into that, sort of convey that in a creative, heightened way, where it feels like, it's really important for me that the audience is with them in one way in Russia, and then it feels very different in America in terms of their relationship to everybody else, So it's, even though in Russia, it's not, they don't want to be there, but it is their native country. So you feel there's no foreignness, there's no alienness about it. You're just there with them. It's just about the story. When you come to the States, language and the barrier of language becomes such a big part of their lives. It's almost like a disability in a way, or it adds a lot of humor to the story as well. It creates a way for Lena to sort of sometimes maybe play dumb to diffuse very dangerous situations with John. So it's like there's so many layers of language playing into it, and that was the reason why I wanted to do that.
Yeah, well, and it works rather seamlessly. I mean, it was interesting again watching it today. I noticed it in the first half that they were just speaking. The actors that I know were speaking as themselves, or well, as characters. But the fact that it's a complete switch of actors and location and everything, it almost is imperceptible that suddenly and they're speaking with accents. And but it was noticeable in a way that was like, I think I get what you're doing there. And yeah, that's great. I love that. Let's jump to John and Grace. And there are a couple questions here in the chat, but would love to talk about connecting with Dan. I don't know how to say his last name, Dan Lauria, and engage, with Dan as a performer and to perform this role, and then we'll get into some more questions around John and Grace.
So we got connected to a wonderful New York casting agent through Marya, actually, Patty McCormick. And she, she ran some names with us. And, Dan was somebody that just really struck out to me as somebody who's really iconic. His role in American television is so iconic. And it's so interesting to see sort of a different iconic American fatherly figure in this story, sort of twisted. He was such a joy to work with. One of the best things about he's just an amazing actor. And so, he's had so much experience that it's just really interesting to watch him work with the technical aspects of film, how he can just like take it from anywhere and he's just not thrown by anything. But also he has so many stories about, he's just worked in theater with everybody from Peter Falk to like, Cary Grant, and so he has all his stories about amazing actors. So I think we spent, between shooting, everybody on set was listening to his, fascinating Hollywood stories, which was fun.
And there's a question here from Lisa around, I'm curious if you ever spoke with Grace regarding making this into a movie and what she thought, or if she asked for anything to be omitted.
So, the character of Grace, my stepmother, ex-stepmother, I guess, she passed away. So I never had that conversation with her. Yeah, I guess that's, I never got to have that conversation. If she was still alive, I would have definitely reached out and I would have asked her more about, so like the flashbacks were based on the things that she told us at the time when she came out, but I would have loved to delve deeper into those. But other than that, no, yeah.
And then Vlada inquires here around the considerations working with Dan in casting Grace and representing her and her journey respectfully, was that, which I think was done exceptionally well. What were there a lot of conversations that you had in advance, or
I mean, for me, it was in terms of how I told the story. That was a big part of it. There's a lot of things that there's nothing that I made up, but I omitted a lot of things because I didn't want to draw negative attention to Grace. So I kind of simplified her character a little bit and almost idealized her a little bit. Just because, there's enough negative portrayals about transgender people, and I didn't want to contribute to that. And then in terms of dance performance, I know I hooked him up with several of my transgender friends and just said, could you speak to them? Could you have conversation, ask, they're willing to talk to you about whatever questions you have, things that, media doesn't get right, things that movies don't get right, things that frustrate them when they see those images. And he's also really good friends with the cast of Transparent, so he had those conversations with them as well, apparently.
Yeah, that's excellent. Kristen needed to run. She was called to something on set, which is I promised her that I would get to production design stuff earlier, but now those questions are coming up in my head. Let's talk a little bit about the Russia segment and engaging with the creativity there. The definitely more stage oriented presentation of Russia, and what sort of influences went into that. Was there, and I don't know enough kind of Russian theater or anything along that line in terms of if there were techniques which you were employing in the kind of tableaus that were there, or anything else along that line. What inspired that?
I wish Kristen hasn't left, because she was such a big
too.
collaborator in that, and she's been amazing. Like she said, she lived in Russia at that time, so she's had so much experience, personal experience, and really understanding that aesthetic. The biggest reference for me was Baroque paintings, and the way that Baroque paintings, you're used to them sort of emerging from the dark and dissolving into darkness. So that was something we talked about a lot with Kristen, is creating sets and lighting sets in a way where things sort of dissolve around the edges. They don't quite, sometimes you don't even have the entire set. It's just suggested in a way, like the exterior scenes. And not all went along with this kind of theatrical aesthetic that I wanted to portray, where you're never like fooled into see, this is like gritty real Russia. This is actually my memory of Russia constructed out of my segments of my memories and things, and photographs and family photographs and some research, but it's sort of a collage more than a photograph.
And the inclusion of Jesus is one of the great. I mean, there's so many great things about this film, but early viewing, that was one of the things that just blindsided me fully. Was that something that was a whimsical ad several years into the writing of the film? Was that always something that you were like, Jesus is going to be in my movie, and it's going to be that fabulous actor from Mean Girls? Where did that come from?
That was that was in the original script that I wrote, so it was always intended to be part of it. I thought, again, going along with like the magical realism kind of telling of the story, I did grow up in Russia in that interesting time where things were opening up, and one of them was religion. But religion was kind of, it's hard to explain to Americans, but Christianity at that time, to me and to a lot of kids sort of in the Soviet Union, it was sort of on the same level as Michael Jackson and Madonna, like capitalism and Coca-Cola. It was all part of this like freedom, America, West, And so it felt very fitting to include Jesus. And I was really into Jesus at that age. I really was. And, you know, not in a way that people are necessarily are here, but, you know, as a child, I really believed. And when I realized that I was gay, it was really, again, ironically, because it's not how we think of Christianity here, because it's so affiliated with fundamentalism, but you know, because I wasn't exposed to those fundamentalism ideas from religion, for me, you know, I did actually talk to Jesus when I was coming out to myself. I was like, well, you know, it helped me. It was like my imaginary best friend, like he is in the movie. And in terms of casting, again, Patricia from New York, she found him, and we were really excited because again, he's kind of iconic. He has a lot of following for Mean Girls. He was really amazing with Hirsch. He showed up and he instantly created this like amazing rapport with Hirsch. Like he instantly became his best friend for like one day. And just watching that, I was like, oh my God, it's so smart. He's creating this chemistry that they need for all the scenes, and it worked so well. We have a lot of really fun outtakes of them dancing, and yeah.
They'll all be on the Blu-ray extras, I think.
Yes, hopefully.
The one of the things I noticed, I mean, during the Jesus scene, but I also noticed a couple other times during the film, is the choice as a filmmaker to have the actors, you know, literally talking to us in camera, even if they're talking to each other, that there's still a like we are literally engaging with us as the audience. And one of those, I mean, if memory serves, was the first scene between Jesus and Little Potato. And can you talk about the choice to kind of, I mean, again, we're dealing with artifice and you know, that sort of thing, to make the choice to put us literally in the film being talked to as an audience.
Yeah, that's just something that I always loved playing with, and in my other work as well, just this idea of being direct to the camera. I don't do that with every scene, but especially in scenes where you are kind of straight on the character, I always feel like you might as well be engaging to the camera as opposed to like looking somewhere off. You know, I mean, if compositionally, if there's a reason why it's a little tilted and you need that with a, you know, the eye line sight thing that you're it's one thing, but if it's straight on, it's just, I feel like it's more engaging and more interesting. And I think more movies are doing that, I'm noticing now as well.
Sure. Yeah. So someone asked in the Q&A here, were you really called Potato? Was that a Soviet thing? And then where is Lena now, and what is she up to?
So Potato was one of, I mean, my mom had so many nicknames for me, some of them I would not repeat. And Potato wasn't like the most common nickname either, but when I started writing the screenplay, because it's so personal and it's basically, you know, word for word my life, I needed to create some distance. In the beginning, it was really challenging. Like at this point, I'm very kind of disassociated from it, but in the beginning, it was very challenging. And I basically called in Potato to create that distance so I could just write it as a story and not feel embarrassed or too self-conscious, but it is one of the names, but it's not necessarily just a Russian thing. I think it's just, she called me funny. I call her funny names too. We just have that kind of relationship, I guess.
And where is Lena now? Is she here in town, or?
Yeah, she lives in Seattle. She's doing really well. I'm really close to my mom. We talk, you know, 5 times a day, every day. So she's doing good.
Excellent. And I assume she approves of the film?
She does. She's waiting to see it with a big audience when I'm not there, she told me.
So she can do the Q&A by herself and
yeah, maybe.
tell all the stories?
Maybe, right?
I want to see that Q&A, let me tell you. Sally in the Q&A here also inquires, have you ever been back to Russia? And what was that like for you if you did?
I would never go back. That's my answer.
Excellent. There we go. The short answer. Brilliant. One of the things I really loved in the film was the musical montages and the use of montage and how incredibly effective emotionally it was within the sequences. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit into, did you always have the music, and for something like the Freedom Song, for shifting from Russia to the U.S. Obviously, that had to be there because there was lip syncing and stuff like that for the song. But the kind of reharmonized Star Spangled Banner later in the film, and then the use of bolero for the kind of repetitive sexual escapades that are differently orchestrated every time, leading to climax. Seems like something you probably planned ahead of time, but wondering what your intentions were. Were they always there for those montages?
So for Virgin Mary number, that was another example of me seeing it outside. I've been a big fan of Riza for a while. She's in New York now, but she used to perform a lot in Seattle. I think she's originally from Oregon. And so when I saw her do that number, that was early in the stages of me writing the screenplay, and I was like, I want this song so bad. I met with her. I was like, do you think you'll let me use the song? Do you think you're gonna be okay playing nutty Virgin Mary in the movie? She said yes. So that was from the beginning. In terms of bolero, that was just kind of came as I was editing, and I was struggling. I didn't know what it was going to be. At one point I thought, should every lover have their own soundscape? Then I kind of tossed that idea because I wanted it all to blend, and I'm a huge fan of bolero, and so we looked up how if it's in public domain, and it is in public domain. So Catherine Joy, who did the American half of the score, she re-recorded it basically herself. And then for some of the American scenes, I would basically take music that my friends wrote and gave me and would play with it when I was editing. And one of the pieces was Seattle's Greta Hurley, who's a brilliant rock musician and classical musician here in Seattle. I had a bunch of her music, and she had this rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, and I put it under Mariah crying, walking home, and I was like, oh my God, this is so exactly like, this is like created for this, for the scene. So yeah, that was like a lucky kind of editing surprise.
And can you talk? You mentioned Catherine Joy, who did the American part of the score. Who else? Who did the Russian side of the score? Was that just source music, or was there a different?
No. So Joshua Cole, who's part of the Generate Art Ensemble, a brilliant local performance art ensemble, we worked together before he scored Potato Dreams, the VR piece, and I just thought it would be perfect to have him do Russia and Catherine do America, because Russia, I wanted it to feel so experimental and sort of Philip Glass and strange, and and he does a lot. I mean, he can do any kind of music, but a lot of the music that he normally does is more experimental, kind of theatrical, avant-garde music. And then Catherine does a lot of film scores and is very experienced in, traditional film scores. And I wanted that to sound like a 90s, like a very almost cheesy 90s, lovey-dovey kind of romantic, inspirational movie.
Yeah, it absolutely works. It's interesting. I didn't quite realize that there were two different composers until you mentioned that Catherine did the American side. But thinking back to how, not just visually different the two pieces are, but sonically as well, it's very very apparent. That's great. Someone Leah here asks, it looks like it was actually shot in Seattle and not Vancouver. Was that a tough decision? And what went into saying Seattle's our place for it beyond it being where it actually happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much, I feel like in many ways it's a love story to Seattle, love letter to Seattle, because we came, you know, my impression of America was very specific to coming straight to Seattle and how beautiful and how accepting the city was. And so that was, you know, we didn't really consider using other cities, and also for practical reasons too. It's like, this is where our community is, and we wouldn't have been able to, I know Mischa can say the same, as like, we wouldn't be able to make this anywhere else, because people really rallied around this project and supported us in ways that I don't think any other, you know, if we just went somewhere else, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, hear, hear. Would someone has written in the Q&A here, would love to hear from Mischa about what the biggest producing challenges were. And were you, Mischa, involved in the creative storytelling side of things? Were you more kind of creative producer in that sort of way?
Yeah, so just to kind of piggyback on what Wes had said about it, you know, needing to be in Seattle, it's very much you know, location specific. And because of all the goodwill of community that Wes has, and that I think other people in the project have sort of brought in, we really felt embraced by the, you know, by Seattle and the community here. The locations that opened their doors to us are, you know, Pretty Parlor, the Sourman's, you know, just on and on. The support that we got from the community was immense, and it definitely shows up on the screen. I think one of the biggest challenges was, you know, it's not new, it's resources, it's money. And what we had in many ways was, we did have time, you know, for Wes had been, you know, developing this for 7 years. So there was very few areas where Wes didn't know sort of exactly what he wanted and who he wanted and how he wanted it. And, you know, being able to sort of support somebody's creative vision that you really believe in, that you really want to see exactly as they sort of imagine it, is such a gift as a, you know, as a producer, to be able to just sort of align. And, you know, I literally think there was maybe 1 issue or 2 issues throughout the whole 6 years where I was like, I might kind of disagree, you know, but really, you know, I think it came down to the challenges were resources, and what we didn't have in money, we had tenfold in support and friends and warmth and community, and, you know, that sort of passion and energy. And I think collectively, the whole community and anyone who knows Wes and knows his mom, you know, knows that this is a story that deserves to be told, that needs to get told, you know, and it just aligned where it was the right time for us to finally make it.
There's a great question here from Karen around you know, applauding the choice to help not only showcase local talent, but to foster new ones with our own local community. And what could be done to help promote more filmmaking in Washington, or local community in general?
I'll let Mischa take that, because I feel like I've been talking so much.
Thanks, Wes. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this definitely, it I think shines a light on, and, you know, so much talent is here. The casting was such a pleasure to do. You know, we did work with Patricia out of New York for Leah Lauria, who's the grandmother, and Dan and Jesus, Jonathan Bennett. Everybody else just came from here, and there's a wealth of talent. And, you know, casting the children was so inspiring, and, you know, and fun. And so Seattle definitely has a plethora of beautiful things about it, and talented people. And our crew, I can't speak enough, you know, of the people that we had for all of our departments, from sort of head of departments down to production assistants, and, you know, I mean, just volunteers here and there. You know, it really I think does shine Seattle as a filmmaker, sort of a filmmaker's dream. The challenges, I think, are more sort of regional, that Seattle is an expensive city to live. And so it's hard for people to, to be able to work in creative fields, especially after a year of COVID. And so I think that it's probably a much longer, bigger conversation of, some of the challenges regionally. But yeah, I definitely, this film succeeds because of the people in Seattle.
Yeah, and I'd piggyback just briefly on that in a way. There's definitely infrastructure that's being worked on in terms of incentives and things along that line, but also there's a new initiative with Harbor Island and creating a soundstage here in Seattle, and work that's being done to build more infrastructure to support films as they're coming. But I also look at that question and go, what can be done? And it's promoting, supporting scholarships for students in camps making films when they're 10 years old, makes a difference in terms of building up skills and connecting, just the younger up and coming audience into the creative arts in general, beyond also just, supporting productions when they're happening, whether it's Kickstarter or, getting in touch with producers and what they're working on, and really supporting financially in the community is absolutely a way to consider that. Yeah. Darn it, I turned my thing off. Someone, Ballard, inquires, talk about the significance of giving the religious icon to the sailor.
So that's also based on actual, experience where I had this hookup that I cared about quite a bit, and he was going back to Afghanistan, and I just gave him that icon that meant a lot to me that I brought from Russia. So it's, basically from life.
And Stacy inquires, wanting to hear a little bit more about working with Hirsch. Other than his friendship with Jonathan, how was it to work with Hirsch? Young actors sometimes need a little bit more support, and he was such a wry, loving humor in the movie. And is that him or just great directing?
I think it's all him. I don't think he needed a lot of support from me, honestly.
It's definitely not good directing. I can vouch for that.
No, we literally, when we had Hirsch audition, and we had, I was taping him on my phone for the audition, and we just looked at each other, Mischa and I, and we're like, holy crap, like, who is this kid? I mean, not only is he so good, intuitive, just intuitive as an actor, so intelligent, but also, acting on camera is also about just the way camera relates to you, and it has, part of it is acting, but also part of it is just something magical that happens with some people when they're on camera and not others. And he just has this magical sparkle in him where the camera just loves him, and he's so captivating. So I didn't really feel like I needed to direct him that much. There's there's awkwardness working with a little kid, the masturbation scene. So I just I pulled his parents aside and I was like, you talk to him and explain, because I don't know where he's at in his development, and I'm not comfortable having this conversation. So let's, you talk to him, explain to him, and I mean, he was really wonderful, such a gift, and I'm so grateful I got to work with him before he's probably going to be a huge mega superstar.
So I assume, based on that story there, that the Jesus's response to the masturbation scene was actually your response to, go ask your mom. I don't know.
Exactly.
Someone in the query inquires about a commercial release. The film just world premiered at South by Southwest last month. You're kicking off the festival run now. Have you been in distribution talks? What's the anticipation of the film moving forward, and how can we all support you in that?
So we have a sales agent. They're trying to sell it. fingers crossed, we'll get a good distribution deal. It's kind of interesting in today's world. Like nobody knows what that means. That could mean some theatrical or no theatrical. It could mean all streaming. It could mean some DVD or Blu-ray and streaming. So honestly, we don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I'm pretty sure we'll get some kind of distribution by the end of the year. And for now, we have a lot of festivals coming up. If you can talk about the film, spread the word, follow our social media accounts, follow our actors' social media accounts, and just spread the word if you like it. I think that's the help we could use. I don't know, Mischa, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't like it, keep it to yourself.
Yes.
Just kidding. Oh yeah, absolutely. Support us. We are, the response already has been overwhelmingly positive. We've been so heartened by the film's effect and the way that it's been received already. So I think we're in a good place, but we're definitely looking forward to sharing it with the world.
Excellent. And Mischa or Wes, I wouldn't stop you from dropping in the chat like what the social media stuff would be, if there's a website people should go to, or if they can like something on Facebook, et cetera, along that line. Feel free to drop that in there. Marya, what is next for you? You're a movie star in this film. Are there more movies coming down the pipeline, or are you knee deep in teaching? What's your plans?
Only if Wes is making them. That's the truth. No, I run a theater out in Pittsburgh. I'm zooming in from Pittsburgh. I'm the artistic director of Pittsburgh Public Theater. So while for a long time, Wes and I knowing each other, I was primarily a writer-performer. Now I'm doing a lot more directing and producing. So I will always dust off my acting for Wes for roles big or small. But I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of films in my future.
And do you anticipate moving behind the camera at some point in terms of as opposed to theater and having had more experiences in the film world?
It's funny coming from an amazing film community in Seattle. There's actually a really exciting film community here in Pittsburgh as well. So maybe Wes has actually been encouraging me of that, which is just crazy. But maybe.
Well, now you can say that both Wes and Dustin are encouraging you of that.
Oh, thanks.
Okay.
I'll keep you
And
posted.
Marya is a brilliant director, and I cannot wait to see her. I keep saying she should start making movies, seriously.
Excellent. And Wes, what's next for you? Are you knee deep in multiple projects?
I'm knee deep. Yeah, I mean, with kind of the afterlife of this is taking up a lot of my time. And then I am starting to write my next feature, which is going to be based on memoirs by a friend who actually, Dennis Milan-Benzi, who created all the amazing original wigs for actors, including both Lena's wigs and the Grandma's wig and the Jesus wig. And he has a really incredible real life, his own life story. And so I want to adapt that into a film. It's even more wild than Potato, if you can believe it. So.
I don't believe it, but I'd watch it. That's for sure. And Mischa, what's up with you? Do you have I imagine, a variety of things in the oven?
Yeah, there's a few. It's interesting. The year of COVID has sort of, it's been so still, and there's been so much sort of solitude that I'm actually kind of enjoying that. And, production is such a, it's such an intensive, all-consuming sort of, rigmarole that I am super excited with Wes to sort of, help usher Potato through its next, phases of life. And I am developing a television series with some friends about the music scene in Seattle in the 90s. So that's kind of fun, but I have a short film that has been a long time in post-production that Wes produced. And so we'll be sharing that probably in the coming year. But yeah, I'm happy to kind of be at this part in my journey.
Yeah, that's wonderful. My last question as we're nearing our 6 o'clock, I figured would be the very end of the film. Was it always the intention to have the camera pull back and see the artifice, the set, the all that is there, and to have in essence, you know, were you intending for you and Lena to be there at some point, or the choice to use the performers as your surrogates in that moment?
Yeah, I definitely always intended to kind of reveal Russia to be a movie that he made in America. So that was always the idea. Yeah, sort of coming a full circle.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw it, it was disorienting in a way of like, what in the world is this is fascinating, and it makes so much sense, and it is kind of the perfect full circle of the film, and I am so in love with this movie. I mean, you know, I'm not cheating on any other films and telling you this, but I am so in love with this movie, and there's so much creativity and there's a heart, you know, center to it that feels unmistakably Wes Hurley, and I'm so proud of you for putting Potato out there, and so proud of, quite honestly, everyone involved who helped bring it to fruition. You're superstars. Thank you so much for your art and for bringing it into the world. I appreciate it so much. And thank you all for watching at home, by the way, and telling your friends about it. Yay.
Thank you so much, Dustin.
Thank you so much, Dustin.
Fabulous. And yeah, oh my gosh, it's right at 6 o'clock. I'm going to throw a pumpkin. Who knows? Friends, it's so good to see you. Those who we didn't get to see who are at home, it's wonderful to see your names. And keep coming back to SIFF. Tell your friends about Potato Dreams. They can keep watching it all week until it's full up. I mean, who knows? That could happen too. But watch it while you can. Absolutely. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everyone.